All right, thank you, everyone. Everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All the commissioners could please make sure that they sign the blue paper. Make sure you signed in. I think it's over with Brittany right now. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda? Commissioner Barras-Bedia, can I have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Barlow. I do have a request to strike 4C, which is the review, discuss, and approve the revised global ends policy. We want to move that out to Commissioner Kirk's phone. We're going to move that because there's still some debate to take place. It would go deeper than what we have time here right now. So we want to move that out to June 24th to take place during the retreat.
But wouldn't the discussion on June 24th be enhanced by a greater awareness of what the questions are?
The problem is that tonight, nobody even knows what the question is right now because the incorrect board, the ends policy was posted. And so nobody has the correct one that's being considered and for discussion, and there's ideas that's still coming forth, so. I do have one item to add to the board report, which would be a discussion on the publicizing meetings. And how, so the items that many of us have conferred about over the last week or so. Does anyone else have any other changes that they wish to the agenda? Since I opened that door, I got to give it to everybody. No? Okay. So 4C, which had to do with the review, discuss, and approve revised global ends policy, is out. The new 4C is replaced with a short discussion regarding publication of meetings. Thank you.
Could you explain again why we're not doing the ends policy? I didn't understand.
Sure. Because there was an alternative promoted, which is far different from what we had the other day, okay? And then it was not what we had agreed to, what would be brought forth tonight, which was just the amendment to, the addition to the ends policy that we looked at last week, which was Commissioner Seguino was going to amend to. So it's a different discussion now.
Have we seen the totally different one? Has anyone seen that one that we?
No, because it's not even to be considered at this time,
Okay.
right? So it's just an idea
Okay.
right now.
I thought you were saying that this was it, that we have on the agenda, that this was the changed one.
No,
Thank you.
no, it's not. And that's why.
Got it.
That's why. All those in favor of the agenda as amended, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against? All those against? One, thank you. Commissioner Harrington was a nay on that.
Use microphones, that was everything.
We are using, that's right here.
Like,
That's just for the
yeah, just
TV.
talk louder, I guess. Yeah, the amps are, or the mics are for the TV. Sorry.
Yeah, there's no mics in the
All
room,
right,
so.
just, yeah, we had a request to speak louder.
We'll now open up, the next item on the agenda is public comment period.
All right, first on the list is Olivia Maher. And do you want to talk about the time?
Yeah, I was approached by Commissioner Orwell to grant this student a 4-minute period because she was having time getting it down to 2. It was contingent upon how many people signed up for the meeting. We have 6, which means under our predisposed 20-minute period, we should have time for a 4-minute allocation to the student. So I don't think there's no harm done by allowing that to happen at this time. Okay, please.
Hi, my name is Olivia Mayer. I hope everyone can hear me. I apologize, I'm going to be reading most of this as I was. Okay. Hello, my name is Olivia Young-Mayer. I am a lifelong resident of Burlington and along with my 3 brothers have been a student at Flynn, Hunt, and BHS. I'm here to share an experience I had in a freshman honors class last November, and in doing so, hopefully demonstrate the need for logical and long overdue change. I'm the victim of a false plagiarism accusation. It was levied against me not with a basis or merit, but solely on a teacher's vague memory and font change on my paper. I stand accused of getting my hands on a paper from a previous student, putting my name on it and handing it in as my own. I did not do this. I was told that it was the best paper my teacher had ever received for the assignment and that it was not my work. It rattled me to my personal and academic cores because my previous teachers, with whom I have formed wonderful and lasting relationships, had always commended me on honesty, hard work, and leadership qualities. Their belief in me as a young person and dedicated student allowed me to learn freely and to confidently set lofty academic goals for myself. Simply put, until that day, I loved school and school loved me back. Despite providing indisputable proof as to my innocence, my former teacher would not and has not acknowledged her mistake. I exist under a dark cloud of suspicion, ever wondering which of my present and future teachers and coaches are aware that I have been labeled a cheater. Labels are suffocating, and my unearned plagiarist label makes me wonder if I can really achieve my goals during the next 3 years at BHS. It is very hard to succeed where you are not believed. In going through this 6-month ordeal, it has come to light that there are no set of common sense parameters or guidelines in place that a teacher must adhere to in accusing a student of the highest form of academic impropriety that exists. Creating and implementing such a policy would protect students from the shame and heartache I have experienced. I took it upon myself to discredit her accusation, and doing so was quick and definitive. I put my paper through 3 academic plagiarism detection search engines, all of which determined my paper to be 99 and 100% unique. I was also easily able to show that I had an 81-minute revision history on my Chromebook for my paper. My paper was mine and mine alone. I did not do what I was accused of seemingly on a whim. It seems to me that had these technological tools available at our fingertips, being utilized by my teacher before she accused me, she would have never done so. Utilizing these tools certainly would have been cause for pause in moving forward with her very specific accusation. It would have prevented her from making such a terrible mistake, which we all make from time to time because we are human. I'm here tonight to ask that my unnecessary suffering be a springboard for positive change. I've sadly let go of the hope that I'll ever be vindicated and told that I am believed. Instead, I have to accept an A+ on a paper my teacher maintains I did not write, and am purposely shifting my focus to the many BHS students who will come after me. I want to ensure that their integrity, credibility, and moral character can't be called into question without a teacher doing his or her due diligence before a plagiarism accusation can be brought about. I want to advocate for parental pre-notification and for the presence of an administrator during accusations as specific as my teacher's was. I would suggest that something so damaging never be levied against a student during the school day because it makes an innocent student unable to be a focused learner for the rest of the day. I'd hope that a teacher found to be incorrect with an accusation have to acknowledge the mistake to the devastated student. The creation of these parameters would be very empowering and healing for me because there's nothing more admirable than advocating for others. To know that my suffering will prevent others from the same fate would be a giant leap down the road to recovery. Even more empowering would be if I and maybe a few other students, parents, teachers, and administrators could work together on a committee to develop such a policy. I would welcome the opportunity to be part of such a process, and I hope that I would be invited to do so. In closing, I'd like to thank you for the chance to be heard tonight. Reliving my experience by sharing it is not the most comfortable thing for me to do. I hope that I have been clear in describing the direction I hope to see my school go with it. I hope that you'll discuss my request and determine it to be one worthy of engaging in a future conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mayor.
Fran Brock.
Good evening. As president of the BEA, let me share with you 2 issues of particular concern to teachers. As of yesterday, your board consent agenda included a teacher renewal list that indicated 248 teachers have returned their letters of intent. This leaves 160 teachers, or nearly 40% of Burlington's teachers, have either resigned, retired, asked for an extension, or have unresolved contract issues. I understand that a second list will be part of your June consent agenda. As teachers leave, past practice has been to conduct exit interviews. I hope that interviews are conducted and the board is apprised of the reasons behind the departures. Honest dialogue about such issues should help inform board policies and direct the administration. My second concern is with the NEASC accreditation report, which is now circulating. It is good news to know that the NEASC Commission granted accreditation for BHS. It's important, however, to focus on the recommendations made in the report to help guide necessary changes at the high school in order to ensure that we are meeting the educational needs of all students. In addition to the recommendations noted in the district's press release, let me draw your attention to the following recommendations. Provide a certified licensed library media specialist for the school to ensure that library media services are integrated into curriculum and instructional practices throughout the school. Provide time for teachers, special educators, EL teachers, and student support staff to collaborate regarding student need and support. Provide additional support staff to ensure a full range of services for identified students and to effectively and consistently collaborate with teachers. Provide and ensure that meaningful curriculum coordination exists between the middle schools and the high school. Ensure resource allocations support the implementation of a proficiency-based curricular model. Develop and implement a more collaborative and transparent building-wide decision-making process. Develop a plan by which administration and teaching staff address professional climate to ensure positive professional discourse between teaching staff and administration. And ensure that the school board, superintendent, and principal are collaborative, reflective, and constructive in establishing goals for the school with a focus on the school's 21st century learning expectations. These recommendations are not trivial. Meeting student needs on these terms would transform our schools. I encourage each of you to read the full report to better understand what is being done well at BHS, but also what needs to be addressed so our students have access to the high-quality education they deserve. Thank you.
Rob Foley?
Mr. Chairman, regarding Rob Foley, he wanted to be here, but he asked me to read something, if I may.
You can stay right
It's okay, I'll go over there just to play Rob. I'm Rob Foley this evening, constituent of mine. It's brief. Thank you. For decades, educators have sought to achieve 100% literacy. Most would agree that literacy is necessary for academic and lifetime success, while illiteracy greatly reduces the odds of success. Because of changes in technology and the economy, literacy is no longer sufficient to ensure our children's long-term success. Our children must learn another language if they want to be successful. The language is the computer language, that is to say, computer science, coding, and programming. The computer language is easier to learn than any other language. Because of its simplicity and utility, it has grown exponentially around the world. It may be the fastest-growing language ever. It has equalized the playing field for children everywhere, and will likely change our concept of literacy. We can no longer afford to marginalize this computer language to a 30-minute technology lesson every other week. Our children must be taught the specifics of information science, coding, and programming daily. We must elevate information science, coding, and programming to a level on par with mathematics and the traditional sciences in our K-12 curriculum. If we fail to embrace the computer language as part of our core curriculum, we'll jeopardize our children's ability to compete and succeed. Thank you very much.
Carolyn Hansen?
Hello. Thank you for having me. My name is Carolyn Hansen. I'm the mother of two kids. One's at Edmonds Elementary School and one's at Edmonds Middle School. And you'll be pleased to know I'm here to ask you about things that don't cost any money. Because I know you spend a lot of time, and I know the school budget is really important for you to spend a lot of time on, but I think it's equally important to think about the things we can be doing in our schools that don't cost us any money. but require us to remember that there's a lot of important leadership that needs to go on there. And I can't speak about all the schools. I can only speak about the 2 schools that I know about, but I'm really concerned about Edmonds Elementary School and Edmonds Middle. We had a new leadership policy last year, as you probably know, a new leadership model. It did not work. I won't go into all the reasons now because there's not enough time for that, but I hope you're all aware that the model that we tried last year, and I'm all for trying new things when they're thought out, but it did not work. We had one principal in charge of 2 schools, and I can tell you that there were times where it was really bordering on chaos. I'm very excited that we have realized that we need a principal full-time at each of those schools, and that we're going to have a new principal and a new assistant principal. I've heard their names. I'm excited about them. I'd like to meet them. I'm really concerned about the fact that, as far as I know, and again, I'm not privy to all the conversations that go on, but nobody in those buildings has met these 2 individuals. They need to be meeting parents now. I brought with me 2 pages, which I'm not going to go into, of questions and concerns I have about what's going on in our school. And I want to be able to talk those over with our new leadership team. They need that time now to be thinking about what they're going to do next year. And I see it with the assistant principal that's still at Edmonds Middle, the school she's going to work to. They're talking to her now about her job next year. So I hope that that's something that we can work on, is making sure we get this new leadership in to be talking to the teachers, the parents, and the school administrators about the needs in the school, because there are a lot of them. I think that it hurts the morale in the school. It hurts the teachers when they aren't given an opportunity.
2 minutes, I'm sorry.
Okay, I have 3 things to say, so I'll move on to the next one then. The teacher input, I think, is really important, and I don't think we're getting enough of it. I think we need administration in the school asking the teachers directly what they think works and doesn't work. I don't think surveys alone are going to do that, and I don't think it's that hard. I think we need to ask the students, too. I can tell you that I've seen exploratories are really not in good shape in our middle school right now. We took out language thinking that it would help to save us money. I hope that you've asked the question about whether we actually saved any money doing that, because I don't see that we did, but I see that the kids don't really have good options of things to do. Chorus was overcrowded this year, and the teacher...
Just to wrap it up, please.
Okay. The teacher quit in the middle of the year, and it caused a real problem. And I think part of that was not having that teacher come in and learn about the culture of the school and interview there so that they knew what they were getting into. And I think it hurts the morale at the school if the teachers don't get a chance to see if this is a good fit. The last thing I'm going to say is I think that we need a plan for retaining good teachers. My son has a teacher right now. I hope you'll write his name down. His name is Jeremy Demink. He's a very good teacher. He's on a short-term contract. There's another very good teacher that could come in. But we should be thinking about if Jeremy can't stay in the job he's in now, what job can we offer him? He's really good. And as far as I know, nobody's talking to him about, hey, we want to keep you in our school district, and here are some options for you. And I would like to keep him at Edmonds Middle because he's really good, but I hope that we're thinking about a plan to try to encourage these great new teachers who are here on short-term contracts, because you don't hire good people in the middle of the year.
We do have to cut this.
Sorry?
We do have to end
Okay.
this, please.
You don't get good teachers when you have to hire people in the middle of the year. It doesn't set a good message when teachers quit in the middle of the year and say, you know, I'm done, I can't be here. It's very hard to find new people. So I hope that we can think some about these things that don't cost us money. I think they're really important, and I don't think we're doing a good enough job at it right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Olivia Wolf.
My name is Olivia Wolf, and I am a 21-year-old senior at the University of Vermont studying sustainability. I grew up in the Burlington school system and currently mentor 2 girls through a UVM and Flynn Elementary School after-school nature program. 18 adults and 24 elementary school kids sit in a circle every week for 5 minutes. It is 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and they have been forced to sit inside since 8 in the morning. These kids are waiting for those magic words that they wait for on every Wednesday afternoon during Nature Club. Their built-up energy can barely be contained for even 5 minutes before they hear the words, "Let's go outside." This is the moment they have been waiting for since last Wednesday, when they had a few hours to simply run or walk outside. In recent years, the number of children diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactive disorder, also known as ADHD, has increased, and the rate at which doctors jump to diagnose the children with this disorder has accelerated. The question is, why are so many kids being told that they have a disorder simply because they cannot sit still? The answer lies in the daily schedules of kids in public schools. At the Flynn Elementary School in Burlington, the children get a half hour of recess, and that includes putting on snow gear in the winter and lining up. At the Mallets Bay School in Colchester, Vermont, the kids get 20 minutes a day for recess. 20 years ago, scientists were studying the relationship between children's behavior in the classroom and recess time. The results were the same as studies done today. As stated by a group of researchers in 2003, it has been consistently found that children focus more and fidget less when they had recess, and it has been suggested that an increase in the diagnosis of ADHD may be because of the fact that children no longer have enough opportunities to play. And if this study and journal was published in 2003, just think about how since then our society has become even more obsessed with test scores and medical diagnoses and continues to view recess as a waste of time. When the two girls I mentor at Flynn told me how much time they were allowed to release the pent-up energy that had been accumulating all day long, I stopped dead in my tracks. Why do they get so little time to exercise? No wonder kids have a hard time sitting still. We pump them full of unhealthy and sugary food and expect them to sit still for 8 hours a day.
Please, so if you don't mind.
And when they can't, we punish them or we bring them to a doctor who diagnoses them with a disorder and gives them medication. We call the kids who can't sit still problem children. Some of these problem children with mental disorders participate in the Nature Club at Flynn, and throughout the course of a year have become better students in the classroom. There is no doubt that some kids and adults truly do struggle with ADHD, but the number of kids being told they have a disorder has skyrocketed. Studies have found that these two phenomena are directly related. But it doesn't take a PhD degree to realize that the human body is not made for sitting still. Many adults who lead sedentary work lives, including college students, know the struggle of wanting to get up, to stretch, to take a walk outside and a break from their computer. They know that taking breaks throughout the day helps them concentrate. So my question is, if we know what sitting inside at a desk all day makes us feel like, then why are we doing it to our children?
Grace Hevey?
Good evening. My name is Gracie Harvey. I am 21 years old and a third-year student at the University of Vermont pursuing a degree in environmental studies. I previously studied education and spent a semester working in a preschool classroom. I have worked at a nature center in my hometown of Baltimore, Maryland for 3 summers and have spent countless hours engaging with children in natural settings. The awe and excitement I have seen in these children far outweighs any experience I have had with students in traditional classroom settings. After attending your last meeting and reading minutes from previous board meetings, I noticed that you are seeking greater community engagement in the Burlington School District. I would like to propose that BSD schools allow 1 class period a day to be held outside, engaging students in their surrounding environments and communities. During my first year at UVM, I volunteered in an after-school program every week at the Sustainability Academy on North Street. Each week, I would walk with the children to a community garden a few blocks away called the Avant Garden. The children maintained garden plots, cleared weeds, planted seeds, and decorated the garden with nature-related artwork. The joy I witnessed in these children was overwhelming. One young boy named Damien had a negative attitude and rarely wanted to engage in any of the activities. The after-school program teacher indicated that his attitude was often like this during school. This changed one afternoon in the garden when he began
30
digging
seconds.
around in a dirt plot. He became so enthusiastic about the prospect of growing his own plant and designing his own plot. Unfortunately for many children, these types of experiences are difficult to access. Standardized test scores, however, across many subjects in schools around the U.S. show that environment-based education leads to higher academic performances. 2 Canadian studies from 2005 and 2006 examined eco-school programs and found that children that have classes in diverse natural settings are healthier, more creative, and demonstrate greater social inclusion regardless of demographics. A study in India that asked students about their perception of nature revealed that exposure to nature leads to reduced stress levels and increased attention span, academic achievement, and interpersonal relations. Holding one class a day, each day outside of the classroom will allow students to learn more about the history of this area and connect with their local communities. It will give all students access to nature and community-based learning, not just students who can participate in after-school programs. I want to begin a conversation to help Burlington School District schools incorporate experiential education into the mainstream curriculum. Thank you.
Now we have time for board reflections, or anybody else, anyone that would like to say anything? Commissioner Barlow.
I would just like to thank Olivia Mayer for having the courage to come and share your story with us here tonight. I know I was moved by it. I know it's really hard to come and talk in front of the school board about a traumatizing experience like that, and I just want to thank you for doing that, and I know you, and I know you're not a cheater. Thank you.
Commissioner Harrington.
Even though some of the people who are speaking tonight were speaking about things that more properly fall for action under the school superintendent line of action rather than board action, I did want to say how much I appreciate hearing people come forward to talk to us about their experiences in the schools, and particularly to Olivia. I just want to say I heard your story, and it is moving, and both Olivia and the 2 UVM students who spoke, I really appreciate the ways in which you're thinking about experiences that you've had and how we can how other people can learn from those experiences. So thanks for sharing your stories.
Anyone on this?
Yeah, I echo the the previous remarks from Mark and Susan Marie. But also, I want to thank Carolyn for expressing the constructive criticism that she has about the Edmonds complex. We really need to hear that as a board. We can't just say, it's all operational. You know, we've got a bigger job at hand. That is our job, to help understand what the issues are and direct our superintendent accordingly, and I'm sure he's on it. But it's very important that we really hear this stuff. And also thank you to Fran for highlighting the constructive criticism in the accreditation report. That is stuff we've got to take very seriously. And again, we can't just downplay by saying, that's just operational. That's our job. That's why we were hired. We're hired to manage the schools, albeit through the superintendent. But I take this stuff very seriously, and we have to fix this stuff. And it is my hope that that is exactly what our goal is. Thank you.
Anyone else? Michelle Will?
Yeah, I have a question about the personnel stuff. Is it possible for us to get a schematic of each of the school buildings with who's teaching in that building and who's administration, all the way down to who are the custodians? Because somehow we get this 200 and whatever it was contracts to okay, and we've done away with having, or at least when I was on the board, we had a committee that dealt with personnel. And so I have no way, I don't know who these people are. I mean, some of them, certainly, there's many of them I do know, but I think it would be far more helpful to know exactly who's in what building and that kind of stuff. So I know when I'm doing this, I mean, in essence, we're putting our name, saying it's okay that they are employed, yet I don't even really know where these people work. So I just, for me personally, and I don't know about the rest of the board, would appreciate knowing who's in each building, what they teach. So, you know, so-and-so teaches 6th grade, their name, and in a building wide, so that we can get a picture of where these people are at least.
Thank you. Anyone else? Commissioner Judson?
That's on the website, whenever I want to know.
What?
That's on the website. Each school lists all of the teachers and what they teach.
If that's the case, Ann, maybe send us a link.
I have never,
School website.
No, I haven't.
You've never tried to look anyone up?
It's on every school website.
Okay.
Yeah, it's literally, that's how you find it.
so are the aides and everyone in that?
Superintendent?
I think we gotta be careful that we're talking about two different issues. If the board is looking for information in terms of who are working in our buildings, that's easily found. And if you can't find it on the school's website, you can certainly communicate with me and get that. If you're looking at information to make decisions on contract, then you're getting to an area of discrimination if you're saying you need to know who it is in order to support, as opposed to their qualifications and skills that bring forward to contract. So I'm just making clarification. I'm not saying you are, but I'm just saying be careful in terms of how you propose the question, because it could come back if we don't approve a contract, and someone could have a case and say that we're looking at individuals in terms of.
This has nothing to do with proposing, okaying the contract. It has to do with the fact that I feel responsibility for saying yes to contracts, but not knowing where these people even teach. That is my problem. Or who, you know, who works in which
So
buildings.
point of order, if it's helpful, maybe we put this on
Yeah.
an agenda for discussion.
Anyone else? Hold on, give me 1 second. All right, closing board reflections at this time. We'll move on to the board report. We're going to start with the student report. Jake?
Thank you. Start off by saying the BHS Register, the school newspaper at Burlington High School, recently won the All New England Award in its class. Thank you. And this is also coming up on a busy time for school. We have final exams coming up in a couple of weeks. We have prom this weekend, and if you can make it, we have a 1X in 2 weeks. So it'd be great if board members and community members can make it out to those plays. And then, this is actually probably be my final board report. I'll be leaving the board, but I'll leave you in the capable hands of Isaac Gentleman. He's a sophomore going on junior, and he'll be serving with Bella Weston. So I'd like to thank you all for being with me and teaching me so much, and yeah, appreciate it.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jake. You've been a big part of this. Appreciate it. The next item on the board report is a discussion as proposed by me to move the start time for board meetings to 6 p.m. from 7 p.m. Would anybody like to talk about it? So there's obvious reasons. We're trying to not be as tired on late meetings, so we make better decisions. And so I wanted to bring it to 6 p.m. Commissioner Barras-Bedia.
Whoever I am. I would love that. It's really, really exhausting to be out so late on work nights.
Kat, did you have any hand up?
Yeah, I'm trying to think about this. I think it's a good idea, but there needs to be definitely leeway for people that work later. If it's on a Tuesday, I'm fine, but any other night of the week, I work till oftentimes
I'm only
7.
talking about the board meetings, so it would only be held on Tuesdays unless it's a holiday to where board members might be absent.
Okay. But even on, well, yeah, okay.
Anyone else? Commissioner Barlow.
I think it's a great idea, but I'm mindful of other people's schedules. I have flexibility in mine. I didn't know if there's any other board members who couldn't
couldn't meet at 6. Commissioner Kurt? Or were you just waving at me?
No, I'm just putting my hand, I'm good. I love the idea.
Is there any, Commissioner
Yeah,
Rick?
just briefly, I think I can probably swing a 6 o'clock start, but maybe we definitely want to hear from any who cannot.
That's what I was gonna,
Yeah.
so let me just, I'm just gonna get that. Okay?
Do we have any idea if it would decrease attendance? Has it happened in the past? I mean, or in terms of people being able to
No,
attend? Have
it's
we
different.
done this earlier
You mean the
before?
public?
Yeah.
It's a good question.
No, I mean, actually, the South Burlington starts at 5 and they get a good attendance at the
Well,
meetings.
that's good. Okay.
So, and they've always had it at the 5 o'clock, and we're just looking to find the median in between,
That makes
which would be
sense.
6. But this would stop the 11:30
Yeah.
PM thing. We were probably not in our best shape.
It's a
And
good,
instead
it's a
bring
good
that
plan
back
as
an
long
hour.
as people can attend.
Any nays? Anybody, I mean, we really don't have to take a vote on this, it's just for discussion. Commissioner Curry?
I'm not a nay, I would just propose that we do it on a trial basis and see how it goes, maybe for
I got no problem with that.
whatever, 3-6 months.
Any nays? I don't think we really need to take a vote or anything like this, so just so you all know. So I'll adhere to that for a 6-month period of only the board meetings, as agreed to by us being at 6 o'clock. But also, if there's any other, actually on the diversity and equity, if there's any point to maybe change, I'm sorry, if there's any point to adjusting the time on that, then you see that we might be willing to be flexible on the start times in order to better accommodate people. So think about that on
We can talk about
the
that
D and E
tomorrow.
side. Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, so, Brittany, for June, we doing a June meeting or no? Or is it just a retreat?
No, we're doing a June.
Doing June meeting? For June, we'll start at 6 PM.
And you said 6-month trial run?
Yeah, we'll start a 6-month, trial. Thanks, everyone. And lastly was an addition to the agenda regarding the publication notices of meetings for the week. There's been a lot of draw on different types of, let me give you a little bit of background on this. There's been a lot of different draw. Some people like to have tweets, others like to see it on Facebook, others like to see it pushed to them. Some people want to subscribe to a mail service notification on this, and so on. And certainly, board members like to announce some things on there, on Front Porch Forum, and there's been a couple of constituents that have asked for it to be on Front Porch Forum. The problem we have is if we don't have, I'll get geeky for you a second, talk about data, right? So in data, we only have one gold set of data, because that way we maintain integrity, all right? So if we had messages going out with actual dates and times and agendas on those meetings across half a dozen different venues, posted by, whether it be one Eric or whether many, to make a change requires a change through all of them. All right? And you take the chance of having bad data out there. The alternative is to have the gold data, and the gold data would be the website, and the website agenda, that's where the truth would always be. We could reference that then on Front Porch Forum postings. If we ever get Twitter up and working and so on, we would always reference the webpage as being the truth. And that way, that's the only place that it would have to be changed. Okay? Any discussion from anybody? Commissioner Barlow?
We used to have our meetings also posted on the city's meeting calendar, and I actually looked when we didn't have our agenda up to see, because I wasn't sure if we were here until just the other day. So is that still happening? So are we still pushing it to the city's meeting calendar as well?
Let me just, do you have an answer for that?
Well, in fact, that might have been lost when Mary Ann left, and it might be part of open meeting law, so that would be good to check. I think all governing bodies are supposed to notify the clerk's office of the meeting as a matter of practice.
The reason I raised the point is because I know there's been.
You send it to them, so then they've chosen,
Yeah.
maybe
Those-
they've
these
chosen
folks
not
actually,
to.
all the postings of board announcements and meetings get sent to the city, so.
So maybe they've changed their practice.
The only reason I raised it is because there have been instances in the past where we've changed a meeting in our calendar and it hasn't been reflected on the city's calendar. So I would just be mindful of that as we put the strategy together to make sure that any information that we are sharing with other calendars or places or other outlets Get it all straight.
Is everyone okay then with us, with the board giving direction to Eric to devise the process for using the website as the gold information that is referenced in Front Porch Forum postings, your postings that you do weekly and so on?
Actually, it's a bigger conversation that Eric is undertaking right now. I'm not sure if you've received the survey even to board members around the website, and we're looking at what's vehicles and mechanisms do we use for communications, period. So that's a piece of the whole picture, and once we do develop our new website, it'll give us some greater flexibility too in terms of being able to push out information and also receive from public type
Okay.
information. So you can certainly include that as an area of emphasis that the board is critically interested in.
And you brought up something else I was going to bring up, which is everybody could, if you could please respond to Eric's request for that survey. I think there's 4 questions on there. If you don't mind, go on there and give them that feedback, appreciate it.
So we have part of this conversation about how to get the word out there about upcoming school board meetings. And I don't think we have to make it complicated. I think the concern from my constituents and even me, because the last month or so has been kind of crazy and not having it on regular days. And I think I love Mark's idea. Mark mentioned to me and some others putting it on the website. But if we could just put, what we're doing now is we're not posting until 48 hours before a meeting, which isn't really enough time for any of us or the public generally to plan ahead with families and that sort of thing. So even if, we can put subject to change, but even if just on our main website, we say, hey, here's our philosophy. We are going to adhere to the second Tuesday rule, so put it on your calendars now, subject to change. And then here's when our Diversity and Equity Committee regularly meets, because I think they have a regular
I think that's
meeting.
posted. Because that's by open meeting law, we have to declare regular meetings as regularly scheduled. That's what a regular meeting is.
So where is that? Because I always look at the school board official postings, and nothing comes up until a couple days before.
Well, school board meetings have always been
Yeah.
the same day of the month.
Right. Well, not always. Last month it was not.
Because we ran on a holiday where
Yeah.
board members were going, such as yourself, were going to be missing.
And then we had a special meeting last week.
But we still met the second Tuesday of the month. We
Yeah,
might
but-
throw in special meetings, but we can't know those.
Well, if we don't know them, then we can't post them. But the ones we do know, we ought to publicize more than 48 hours, even if we don't publicize the official notice of it. That's my opinion.
Can I just?
Commissioner
just so
Obeng.
we can-
I mean, Superintendent
move
Obeng.
on, I think if that has been the practice, it is posted in, and the conversation we're gonna have around the board calendar is an opportunity to identify, sort of regular meetings we're gonna have, and that will certainly be shared with the public so they can see that. And then in between, there are times when the board has special meetings or moving forward, but we'll have an opportunity next month to actually review next year's, agenda, and then we'll be able to put it out there and actually even signify what some of the topics could be ahead of time as well, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The last thing up, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the travel policy as proposed. Give you a little bit of a background on it. According to the Agency of Education, federal regulations require this to be a board-level policy. As you can see from the attached, those who have computers or whoever had the chance to look at it, it's general in nature. Burlington School District has a travel procedure in place at the administrative level to implement this policy, but we need a policy to be adopted by the school board so to prevent AUE withholding funds. Okay? The policy as stated is the policy of the Burlington School District to reimburse the reasonable expenses for travel for school business on a mileage basis for miles traveled and an actual cost basis for the travel expenses incurred by its employees and school board members to the extent that budgeted funds permit. Reimbursement will be only for those expenses that are reasonable and necessary for the activities of the Burlington School District. The method of reimbursement will be consistent whether expenses are incurred in furtherance of federally funded or non-federally funded activities. Prior approval from the superintendent or his or her designee will be required. Pursuant to this policy and consistent with relative collective bargaining agreements, the superintendent or his or her designee will establish written procedures to govern the reimbursement and method of prior approval for the following: air and rail travel, meals, lodging, and mileage. Can I have a second to the motion to adopt? Commissioner Kirk, discussion. Commissioner Curry?
I would just like to ask that we get a report back when the procedures are developed. Not that, I don't feel the need to see the procedures, but just that we know that they're done.
Anyone else? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion as stated, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against? Thank you, Ryan. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And now I get to turn it over to the superintendent for the superintendent's report.
Reverse the order a little bit to get a beat, 'cause I know we have staff here and a guest here, so I want to give them opportunity to speak to this item and then be able to leave if they need to. So,
Say that again.
Good evening, everyone.
So, we've, we're going to share with you a little quick presentation around the Burlington High School campus. As you know, this year, when we were going through our process of analysis around our facilities, we made this decision to put forward to the community to support deferred maintenance of all our schools. And the big question out there was around what to do with the high school. And we thought at the time that it wasn't appropriate for us to bring that forward because we didn't have enough analysis, enough information to share with the public and say, this is what we need you to support. Since then, we've spent last several months with our architects and engineers assessing the building and also going backwards to what work had been done, I think about 4 years ago. And now we're coming forward with a bit of information in terms of some options we have. We plan to go out to have a community committee to have some conversations around this topic before finally coming back to the board with what we've heard from the community and some recommendations around moving forward. So I'm going to turn it over to Marty.
You just did the whole
I just
presentation.
did the full presentation.
So I'm gonna start off. I'm just gonna do a little recap. I'm sure most of the members of the board remember that in 2013, the district actually put out an RFP to hire an architectural firm to look at redesigning Burlington High School and Burlington Tech Center. That contract was awarded to Black River Design, and we have John Hemmelgarn here from Black River Design, who we've been working with since 2013 on this project. So at that time, an extensive amount of valuable input was received from community members, administrators, staff, board members, to come up with design objectives. The project, as Yao mentioned, was then put on hold. There was a couple options that were proposed at the time, and then we felt that we wanted to take this opportunity to look at what the rest of our building's needs are, so that rather than come out with a big, large bond for the high school, knowing that all of the rest of our schools also had significant need, we felt that it would be beneficial to the community to focus on what those needs are for the other sending schools, and then come back and reevaluate a proposal for the high school. So those design objectives that were identified at the time, which are the same design objectives that we're working with now, include reducing travel paths. We're going to focus a little bit more detail on that later in the presentation here. Address accessibility and accessible challenging routes around the building. Create secure entry points. Create more of a 9th and 10th grade academies. The way the current buildings are set up at Burlington High School, each department is housed in its own building. So we have a science building, a math building, an English building, et cetera. So students navigate through the building based on the core academics and not necessarily with their grade levels. There's a need for additional conference room space. There's relatively no space to have confidential meetings with parents or staff meetings, et cetera. be nice to create a new face, a new facade for the building. If you look at the current design of Burlington High School, you come up to the main entrance and what you see is a couple of big brick walls, which are the exterior walls of both the gym and the auditorium. Not that creating a new facade is the most important piece in learning, but it definitely could help create a more positive space that our community could be more proud of. As well as provide additional PE facilities for our phys ed classes and after-school or an evening community athletic groups. We also have identified the need to provide additional support for the Buckart Field. We have a great turf field across the street from the school. We want to provide additional space that would support that field, such as locker room space that are closer in nature without having to go across the street up 2 flights just for locker room space, as well as additional storage support and informal student gathering spaces. We're looking to reconfigure classrooms to accommodate 21st century learning and address the deferred and preventative maintenance needs. Through the analysis that we did on all of the schools, we also identified that BHS has roughly $27 million worth of deferred and preventative maintenance needs. So those needs need to be addressed even if we didn't do any other additional upgrades to the building. So some additional design objectives that we've focused on since we just recently started meeting again are major emphasis on accessibility. What we heard from the community since we kind of paused and stepped back is that in order to gain support from community members, there's a need to really focus on addressing the accessibility issues with the school. And as we look at doing whatever redesign, we're looking through that lens of how to address that overall accessibility. We want to create a single entrance drop-off so that all students, when they're dropped off in the morning, either from school buses or parents or driving to the school, that they're gaining access through one entry point in the building. We want to decentralize individual academic departments. Like I said, each building houses its own academic department. We'd like to decentralize those so that we have English departments communicating with math departments and science departments, et cetera, as well as centralizing faculty offices around a central location like the library. We refined our program needs, making sure that whatever proposed building plan we come up with, we're making the most use of all of our classroom space so that we're not necessarily just adding classrooms, because we recognize that there's a need to increase the number of programs, and we're making sure that those classrooms are being used for all periods of the day. We want to provide appropriate location for On Top. Last year we moved the On Top program at VHS with the sale of the Taft building, and we want to make sure that we're meeting all of the needs of that program as well. And another proposal is to house part of the property services staff, which currently operate out of a satellite building on Shelburne Road. We'd like to move them to Burlington High School to gain some efficiencies, to have the bulk of our property service maintenance staff working out of our biggest property, instead of always having to transport around the district to address the maintenance needs. So some inherent challenges of the existing building. There are illogical and unreasonable accessible routes. Excessive travel paths. I want to give some examples here. So here are the different buildings that we have at Burlington High School. There's A building, which is the main campus, which houses administration, gym, auditorium, nurse's office, and cafeteria. There's also, on the bottom floor here, we have chorus and band. This is English department, math, and science. Over here is things like art and family, consumer, and science. So students that have to go to classes in these outbuildings here obviously have a challenge to navigate all the way from these buildings to the main campus to attend their lunch, visit the nurse. So an example of a student's daily schedule may require them to have science in this building and then attend band or chorus, which is way at the bottom of this building, and then navigate over to math and then back to the cafeteria. So it's a very challenging building to navigate.
But Marty, the challenge is not just the distance, but the school actually has 7 levels, right? So you could, go ahead.
If you stack this building on top of each other, it's actually 7 different stories. So from the bottom of A building to the top floor of E building, it's 7 different stories. So in order to navigate from one point to the other, you literally need to go up 6 flights of stairs. So you can imagine how difficult that is for any able-bodied person, let alone a handicapped person. So we'd like to get started again. We're proposing 3 different options, a couple that were proposed in 2014 and one that we've just recently been working on. So here was the one option to build a brand new school at Burlington High School. So what was proposed in 2014 was to possibly build a brand new building on top of the baseball field and the student parking lot, and what would make this a little bit more efficient is the ability to be able to build this building while students were still housed in the existing high school, and then eventually move the students over to the new structure and then demo the existing building. That proposed cost was roughly $95 million.
And that was 2014. So I guess in these 2014 numbers, one thing we want to consider that there's definitely probably has been some inflation, or there might be some difference between 14 and 17, but it gives you an example of the size and the scope of the projects.
So second option that was also proposed in 2014, and again, these are just, conceptual designs that were based on average construction costs, but this option was to renovate the existing building and provide a 90,000 square foot addition to address some of the challenges that were proposed by having a new gym, a new administration office, and a new theater as well. But this option was to really just focus on renovating the building as is, with no significant change to the structure. One of the challenges here is being able to address the obvious accessibility issues. That proposed option was estimated at $68 million. So our third option here, the most recent option that we came up with, was to demo the C and D building and repurpose the E building for a proposed program that we would identify at a later time, or we would also have the option to demo that building, depending if we found a better use for it. But then we would focus on building all new construction around the existing footprint of A building. So we would actually be proposing to add 4 stories of classrooms around that existing building. A couple of things that we're able to achieve by doing that. One is to clearly address the accessibility issue. Everything would be focused all around the core building. All the classrooms would be accessible, not only from in kind of a square here, but also there'd be a brand new proposed elevator right when you enter the front entrance, as well as another elevator over here and here. Another area that we're able to address by wrapping new construction around the existing building is the existing building has a very poor building envelope. What that means is we have very poor insulation in the exterior walls and very poor windows. So we know that everything that we would have to do, and as we did renovations to all the existing building, by building around that existing building, we would be able to do that by as we did our new construction to that building. We would also be able to create a new facade front entrance to the building. So here's just kind of an example of a new conceptual image. If we were proposing to wrap new classrooms around this existing structure, we would be able to obviously offer some nice new windows and a lot of architectural detail to the new front entrance of the high school. So some general comparisons. The 2014 option to build new, estimated cost was $95 million. 2014 renovation plan option was $68 million, and the 2017 option that we just recently spoke about is proposed at $58 million. So we're reducing about $10 million, and we're able to address a lot of additional issues such as the accessibility. So some major comparisons in impact on learning during construction. The new building, there's little to no impact on student learning during construction. As I stated, we could clearly just build the new building, and once it's done, move the students over. Obviously, we would maybe have to figure out some arrangements around parking and or the ball field, but very little disturbance to the students in their day-to-day learning. The second option, significant amount of impact on student learning, because we're going to be doing work in every single space throughout the school. So clearly we can't do that over one summer or 2 summers. So we're obviously going to have to find some swing spaces to move those students to, whether it be a different location, temporary classrooms, or things of that nature. And the last option, where we're focusing most of the new construction around the building, and we're proposing to demo some existing buildings. Obviously, there's less impact because we can focus on the work in the new construction areas before we move the students out of the areas that we're proposing to demolish. Some cons on the new building. Obviously, it's the greatest cost option. Some cons on the 2014 renovation plan. Clearly, we will still not be able to fully address the accessibility issues that we have with that design of that building. Change in design is minimal. Programs limited to current structure, and unforeseen costs due to renovated versus building new. The cons that we've identified on the 2017 renovation plan, unforeseen costs to renovate, obviously, compared to building new. Some pros on the new build, can meet all planning objectives, flexibility and design options. Some pros on the 2014, meet most planning design objectives, and some pros on the latest plan is will meet all planning objectives, and it's the least cost option. So where do we go from here? We have a planned community planning committee meeting tentatively scheduled for May 24th at 7 p.m. at Burlington High School. Our hope is to make a choice on an option here and set forth a community-driven campaign to support the new 21st Century Learning Center.
Okay, thank you. So basically, we want to give you sort of a primer, and we have a list of community members along the way when we've been doing the deferred maintenance work last year, who are very much interested in talking about the new high school. Also have a list of individuals who were part of the planning 4 years ago, who were on that committee, who are interested in being part of this conversation. At this point, we're pretty much going to share the information and then have the individuals who come together, the committee, talk about what would be an appropriate next step, and then map out some timelines in the process that we can get community input and get some information that we can bring back to the board, some recommendations based on what we've heard and what people are thinking would be the best fit for our schools. Okay. Yeah, if you have questions, sure.
I know how important it is to involve the community. I'm really glad that there's already a date for that, May 24th. What is the plan for involving teachers?
So I can answer some of that.
Thank you.
There's still lots of work on any design that we choose here. And throughout that work, the architects are still gonna meet with, once we drill down the level of design into each individual classroom area, we're still gonna gain input from staff throughout the building to understand the needs of those programs, so.
Yeah. If you look back in the presentation, when they initially started this project 4 years ago, they did have conversation with staff in terms of what their needs. So some of that data has already been brought forward. And the newest plans, we've been talking with administration around, what are the needs in terms of 21st century learning in your schools and things like that. But we're really still at the process stage.
Right,
In terms of,
you
so
answered
we'll
my
get into
question.
those kind of details once we kind of figure out a process, right?
It's pretty easy to say, let's say, it makes sense to have a family consumer science classroom here, but once we start doing
Yeah.
those designs, we're gonna need to gain that input from
Thank
the
you.
faculty.
Stephanie?
So when you say make a choice, I'm assuming that's a ways down in the timeline?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think really actually, for the meeting, I think the meeting that we're going to have those are interested people who want to be on the committee. And we're looking at the committee making some choices around what would be an appropriate process to get this information out and then make a choice on what we recommend to the board. We really want to be community-driven because at the end of the day, even whatever the board decides to do, it's going to be dependent on the will of the community to support in terms of the strategy, in terms of how we move on. Liz?
I have a couple questions, and then just want to know when you see during the process the best time for board feedback. I assume it's after the community happens and you do another presentation, and then
Yeah,
we might.
yeah.
or
I
when
think
would
that
be-
we wanted to share this piece with you because we
Yeah.
were getting ready to have this community committee because there are a number of people who've been since day one I've been here have been very interested in talking about this. So we wanted to say, hey, look, we've been talking with architects and engineers. We've got some plans. Here we are. We're going to start a process. There are all kinds of stakeholders who need to play a role in this, right? What do you think? Give people an opportunity to give their best ideas and then start a timeline. So we'll be back to the board after we've had our conversation to say, hey, look, this is what we heard and this is what we think, and we think that you need to be involved at this stage and you can sort of have input on that. You're also welcome to come to this this meeting as well, too, right?
So my questions are, given, and it might be a question for John, given that the existing design of the building was done in a way that responded to kind of a programmatic concept of being like a college campus, I'm curious about best practices for recreating the problem that you're responding kind of to today's programmatic needs that may not be the programmatic needs in another 20 years. Is there any way to address that? Maybe it just is what it is and you plan on building a new school every, few decades or something.
I can speak to that moment briefly. You don't, in some ways, you are kind of stuck. Nobody builds a new school every 20 years, but you do typically renovate that. That's why bonds for school construction are usually 20 years and not 30 or 40. Because there is a renewal that goes on both in building systems, but also in the educational philosophies that are driving that. We do try to be as flexible as we can. The quintessential flexible plan, the open classroom was just another philosophy, it turned out, and it really wasn't that successful. So what we're looking at right now is creating many different size spaces within the building that can be different uses, as you need a space that houses 10 people, or a space that houses 30 people, or a space that houses 100 people. You really want to put that variety of space in the building. we can only do the best that we can do, short of the proverbial crystal ball.
Right, but that's helpful to understand
Yeah.
that flexible design.
Yeah, so even when in the presentation there, we showed even in the classrooms, the sort of the movement is around modular spaces, right? Multi-purpose spaces, right? So if you saw the classroom even was the type of, it was configured in a circle, and you could move it around, and even labs are done in a way that you can use it for multiple uses, so we can have that flexibility. So that will carry us for many years, because we can change it up. You can even cut out a space and put something else in there. So our staff, our admin have been sort of looking at the 21st century learning models and what it looks like, and, you know, in terms of what we feel should go into their classrooms, and that'll be the next evolution in the process in terms of having those conversations. But
I have two more questions. One is, the RFP, will that carry all the way through the completion of design? Or what was the original RFP
So the
request?
RFP brings us up to the bonding, and I think there's some language.
The bonding for the actual building?
Correct.
So it will carry
I
us
think
all the way
there's-
through design?
To the bond, not the final design.
Oh, okay.
Because you don't usually do a complete building design before you go to bond.
Okay.
You don't do the level of design, which includes all the engineering plans, et cetera. But to answer some of your question, there's some language in the RFP that states if the bond is awarded, the assumption that we would continue working with the same firm.
There is
And
language
we
in
will-
that
there is
RFP.
language
We
that
would want to.
continue.
Yeah.
There is
Yeah.
language
Yeah.
that binds us.
Yeah,
to
I
it,
just didn't know when the timing of the
Yeah.
bond was in terms of
Yeah.
design and permit and all that.
Right.
And then my third question is, or not really question, but rather just suggestion is that we approach this with some kind of looking at opportunities to actually turn the building into net zero that would create more of a revenue stream, so that we could work with BED on, you know, a renewable source that could actually return funds to the district. And then along with that might be that if there's enough space for admin offices, that we'd free up another property that could be leased or something and become a revenue source as well.
David? Commissioner Kerr?
The buildings that you're talking about demoing or possibly removing from the campus, but those are, I mean, does it make sense to, does it really make sense to move property services to this campus and get rid of Shelburne Road? And just questions. I mean, we have 3 buildings that are being used. Does it make sense to move Horizons back out of St. Mark's and put them in one of those 3 buildings? Those kinds of things. And with the new pre-K initiative and freeing up admin, maybe possibly moving admin to one of these buildings so that we could free up the preschool at Ira Allen, so that we could put more of our preschool campus there. Is those all, are those all parts of this puzzle?
Yeah, those are great questions, because we've been talking about that, and Marty spoke to that. It's a possibility. One of the things that I'm hoping that we're able to do is capture opportunities for alternative programs. Like if we want to have an alternative suspension program, where can we house it? If we want to have maybe Horizons going there, maybe another special ed program that's self-contained, right? So we have, you know, we could, maybe one building goes away, so create a space for parking, but we keep the other, you know, so those are all possibilities in terms of moving forward, right? Jeff?
If the community doesn't vote yes on a $50, $60, $70 million project, do we have any kind of plan B that takes care of at least the accessibility, or is there one to be thought of, or is that, what's our contingency plan?
Well, we did put money in the budget with the last bond to address some needs at the high school. And we know overall is 27 million if we wanted to kind of fix the whole school. So we would definitely apply, I think it's 1.5 million we put in for next year, that we could address some of the needs already, and then we would have to plan with the existing dollars to support that school. If the community decided they don't want to do anything, we'd have to just try to address accessibility needs and continue to patch it up as we move forward. Without the resources, that's as much as you can do.
Can I just comment briefly on addressing the accessibility. So, I mean, most of the building is accessible, it's just not necessarily reasonably accessible, because it takes so long to get from one point to the other. But there are elevators, there are ramps, it's not like you can't get from one place to another, it's a lot more challenging. So it's pretty difficult just to address that with new elevators, new lifts and whatnot, without reconfiguring the layout of the building.
Those two spread out.
Correct, yeah.
Commissioner Barlow?
I've had the opportunity to sit down on a few of these meetings with Marty and Black River and Tracy and Adam, and just to sort of observe. And I have been impressed with Black River's ability to hold all of these various design considerations and priorities, and keep them all together in a plan. And Marty's constant pressure to do it for less money. So I've seen 2 or 3 iterations of these designs that are very different, but achieve the same results. And it's been an interesting process and one that's been good to watch. I'm particularly happy that we're trying to do it in a way that we think we can sell to taxpayers, because obviously we need the community behind this. It's a big ask, coming on the heels of sort of a big ask last year. And with that in mind, I would say that the community input process should be a complete one, and not just a meeting or 2, but should involve extensive outreach to NPAs. And I don't know where that you sequence that, whether this meeting on the 24th, this is just for the planning,
This is just for people who had expressed an interest in looking at a new building for the high school.
And as that committee does its work, then there
needs to be a
other
full
meetings.
plan in terms of what the community engagement will be and how do we gather information and the process around how we make final recommendations. So, but there are a lot of keen people who are very much interested in being part of that process. And so we felt that this was, we could do the technical work from staff side and provide some information, and then have community members who are very much interested start the community outreach stuff to garner support for one of these plans. Right?
And how will we decide on who is represented in that committee? I mean, obviously you want all the various stakeholders represented, but who will decide the membership of that committee?
Well, we've been, in all this sort of infrastructure meetings, we've been putting out a list and inviting people to put their names on a list if they're interested. So we're starting with a coalition of the willing first, right? So people who said they were interested, we're asking them to come forward. I think in terms of, we'll have a conversation, I'm sure, about membership and who's missing and who should be there and that kind of thing. But we really want to start with people who actually have been saying, we want to do this. We want to be a part of it. So we thought that'd be a good place to start the conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have anything else?
I have another item, but if we're finished with this.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Marty.
Yeah, just so you know, we're running behind.
Yep. You say that to me every meeting. We'll get to the
I say that to everyone every meeting.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so this is, what I'm providing to you here is a sample of the board annual work plan. This is the board's work plan. So the board is going to have the opportunity, starting at the retreat, to play with this and decide, make some decisions around some of the content that goes in there. But I wanted to kind of lay it out for you today so you can kind of get a bit of understanding, and then you might have some feedback. It doesn't have to happen today. The feedback can happen any time from now until the board retreat, so we can actually have a discussion and do the final board work plan. So let me take you through it quickly, what it looks like. So you can see at the top here, we've kind of put in categories around each month and the date of the actual board meeting here. We've categorized the policies that we've set up in the policy governance. So there's the administration monitoring policy, so the ends policy and executive limitations, and then there's the board monitoring policies and the board management and governance process. So that will follow that sequence in terms of the numbered pieces there. We've added a column here around board learning, and you'll see as we go through, there are a number of things that the board should be putting on their calendar to participate in. You know, some of the VSBA stuff, the National School Board Association things, and the board can also now look to say, you know, we want to do our equity training on this month and put it on there. So those are conversations that we can have. This last column is particularly critical. I've called it preparation for monitoring reports. So we have all of these policies, but these reports are really the evidence that we're sharing with you to eventually embed into a final report under one of these policies to say, yes, we met compliance under this category, right? But every month, we're going to be doing some of the regular things. And one of the reasons why this is there, and it's going to be very explicit, so we'll also have a conversation at the retreat to talk about some of the things that the board regularly wants to see as presentations. It might be monthly, might be quarterly, might be annually, so we can have that debate. For this purposes, we've done, I think, a pretty good job of work with Nate to put in some of the finance pieces, because that's pretty concrete in terms of what we've done. And that's a good one that I've been here 2 cycles now to kind of see how it goes through. So we'll be able to kind of see how that models under this, and then when we have the retreat, we can have the conversation around what else could be included. But one of the things I wanted us to be disciplined around this is to make sure that the work that we're talking about is work that's connected to the policies that the board has set out. That, because what tends to happen is if we decide we're going to do these policies and then we start doing presentations, and then we start adding presentations that don't coincide with the policies, then we're layering on and we're not monitoring the work that we said we want to do. So this will hopefully help us to be a little bit disciplined. It takes a little bit of time to kind of figure that out, but hopefully it's an organizational structure that'll help us. So I'll go through a few examples here, and then we can just have a quick conversation, and just to know that this is just to get you oriented, so when we have the board retreat, we'll have some critical questions that'll help us fill in these blanks. So you can see here, so in September, I had put in here, so I've kind of cataloged these policies based on looking at neighboring districts that also have been following policy governance and seeing when they had delivery of, you know, certain policies, and kind of use that as a timeline for when we would. So under executive limitations, I've slated 2.6 and 2.8, and most of those 2s are linked to a lot of financial areas that we want. And then there's the board responsibilities too. So the board has the 3.1 and 4.1. So this is where you'll have an opportunity starting at the retreat to talk about what are these policies. And I know Susan Marie's been thinking about, you know, what's the process we're going to use for the board to deliver their reports, right, in terms of how to do that. So those are conversations. If you look on the right here, we've already looked at, okay, in September, we would probably have, did you change this? Okay. In September, we would do the variance reports that we would normally do at the what was called Finance Committee. And I specifically noted at 2.3, that falls under that category for the policy. But this is an evidence, so when you see my final policy around policy 2.3, I will reference that you receive these variance reports, and you could, you know, be a tab to it, and you'll see that. And you can see the monthly warrant report. And then we've made a decision here to look at the cash flow report as a quarterly report. So we'll make those recommendations, but at the retreat, the board can have a conversation and say, well, maybe we want to see that more often, or, you know, more than quarterly, or just monthly, or maybe we don't need to see that often, right? Here's an example of an area. I'm not sure if anyone attended this past year. This is the regional board meeting for this region. I'm not sure if we went. So this is a good opportunity for us to kind of catalog the types of learning, and if it's not the chair, but at least designate someone to represent us so we can be in the loop with the other districts around communication, around those pieces. Okay, it's not going?
Maybe I just try to scroll it. Sometimes with the projector it gets a little funky too.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, okay, that's better now, okay. Okay, so you can see in October, same format here, executive limitations. I have 2 policies that I would bring forward, and then the board has a governance process policy in here. I'm not gonna go through it tonight, but we've kind of, on this tab, when we do it on the 24th, we've kind of been really specific around each one of those policies and what it means, and we've raised some questions around how to do that work. So we'll get a chance to go back and look at that as well, too. Do you have a question, Commissioner Kirk? No. No? Okay. Vermont School Board Association, we slated for October. There's an annual meeting there, and so we should have representation. And then you can see on the right side, once again, I've tried to signal what policies these reports would fit under, right? And the ends policies, I know we will have an ends policy once we've kind of decided on it, but I know that we will have to do probably several presentations to share some evidence before I do the final report and say, this is the final report, right? And we want to make sure it aligns with the strategic plan. So I've slated to October is probably a good time to start, because one of the things most districts do in October or September is to look at the overall data in terms of, this is the data for the district in terms of achievement, and you get that whole big picture. So I thought that's a good month to do that presentation, and you can have that, and then that sets us the course for the remainder of the year. And then you can see here the other things, we've kind of modeled this off of what we've kind of done the last 2 cycles around budget. So you would see the budget timelines and presentations would come to the board, and then the other monthly items there. I'm not going to read everything here to you because I know we're pressed for time, but it's pretty much the same pattern that goes through, and we've scrolled it all the way down to June to finish the whole the plan. So we will have an opportunity at the retreat to kind of get more deep into each and look at how we want to place some things. Liz and then Kathy.
Can you just clarify again, please, that column that says preparation for monitoring reports?
Right.
Does it relate back to the previous columns? Because finance stuff should all be under executive limitations, so is that just intended to kind of cross-reference?
Okay, so great question. So it is a cross-reference in some respect. The policy, under the policy governance and the policies, there will be a policy that I will present annually to see compliance. But at the same time, we're presenting information, right, that the board wants to see on a more regular basis that we're going to present under this preparing for monitoring. The reason why I titled it preparing for monitoring is, yeah, we can.
Like regular reports.
Yeah, we can talk about the language. Yeah, I just had. Yeah, I had to put something there just so it just made sense to me, but it may not make sense to you. And as I said, at the end of the day, this is going to be your planning document, so you'll get a chance to make any changes to it. So a good example is right here is the audit, right? So that audit is something I know that's important to the board, and so we pick a date where we're going to do it, but it's not necessarily a singular policy, but it falls under 2.3. So I'm saying, okay, well, I'm going to put it on the calendar so you can see that this is when the audit's going to come. So you know it's there and it fits under a certain policy. So when we do this audit presentation, you'll see that. But when I do the policy, whichever policy fits under that audit, we'll reference that we've done an audit presentation, and you can find the link to that audit here or whatever information and that kind of. Okay. Hope that helps. Doesn't confuse you further. No?
No, it's very helpful. I think we'll just need to talk about how to clarify.
Yeah.
How to use the tool.
Yeah. Okay. Kathy.
What I don't see on here, though, is us going out to the community. And maybe there should be another column of monthly, what are the things we're doing community-wise?
Right. So this is not complete, right? So this is the template we're gonna use to have the conversation at the retreat. So if the board wanted to plug in community engagement opportunities, you could either put it under board learning, in terms of learning from the community. So you can say, we're having thing about state healthcare, and we're gonna do a public thing. You can do that. Or, I mean, you could add another column if you thought it was something that needed a different column. But I think it'd fall under learning, because pretty much anytime you're going out to the community, you're trying to learn from them in terms of information. So there are many blanks here under the board learning. I didn't want to fill everything in for you, but I think that those are conversations that we have at the retreat to decide what you want to put in there. But the good thing about this is, we can have by this summer a plan that's already embedded, and you can see exactly what we're going to do, a roadmap for the year. And then we can do things like you're talking about, Jeff, in terms of publish, to the community that, hey, the audit's going to be, this date, and this is when these reports are coming. People know ahead of time, in terms of what we're planning for the whole calendar year. Okay. Any other question? Susan Marie?
Yeah, I think this is looking great. I mean, still a little work to be done to fill it all out, but I think it's going to be a great planning tool. I was going to, you anticipated my contribution, Kathy. I think the community engagement forums are something that I think we had, when we voted to adopt the policy governance, I think the general idea was by July to have a sense of what sorts of community engagement forums we wanted to have in the coming year, because the topics, what topics do we want to organize them around is something that I think it's worth investing some time in. I've also been looking at a lot of other districts who use policy governance and looking at how do they construct their agendas. And it's pretty common for some other boards to have something that they call study sessions. So, Commissioner Curry asked earlier about the educational models underlying some of the assumptions about the construction at the high school. That's a great example of something where maybe we want to spend an hour at some meeting a year from now, just really digging into that and having a guest come and talk about that. So there's a lot of things that we could fill in board learning for ourselves as we think, what do we need to know more about in order to be able to do our work well? And then certainly the community engagement forums need to get figured out.
Yeah, I think there's some critical questions for each of the categories that we'll probably pose at the retreat to prompt conversation, right? Because you can implement so many different things in here, but what I like about having a template is you can look across and you can say, wow, we're really heavy in this month. If we want to do a study on something, where can we put it to kind of, lighten it up, or, how do we balance? Or at this time of year, we're usually dealing with budget and getting ready to talk with community around supporting the budget. So maybe we don't put in studies in that month, it should go somewhere else, right? So it gives you that bigger picture. So I'm excited about having the conversation because it really helps us as staff prepare for the reports and even the events ahead of time, so we can be better prepared and serve the board and the community better. Okay. Questions? No?
Hey, Mark.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I just wanted to second what Yao just said. I've used a calendar map similar to what we're talking about in the past, and I found it incredibly helpful planning-wise and just sort of really useful around organizing your thought and sort of planning ahead of time for how to have conversations that you're going to need to have and make room for conversations that might spring up. So I'm really glad we're doing it.
And Ryan, sorry, I know you can't see the calendar itself, but we'll get you a sample so you can kind of see what we have, because I'm sure you'll have some insights from your other experience to give us.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Can you share the sample with everybody?
Sure.
Can we actually post it on the website policy governance page as draft for consideration and discussion? Thanks.
All set?
All set.
Okay. Let's close the superintendent report.
What about good news?
Good
He didn't-
news.
he-
Yes. Good news.
I thought you said you didn't have any, I thought you only had the one thing to do.
It's good news. It's just a
Okay.
quick thing. I'm gonna defer over to my senior director to share the good news about the audit.
That's you, Nate.
So,
Yes. You want me to share the good news?
No,
I
I
thought this
got
was
it.
a good opportunity for you to share the good news.
I didn't know I was getting thrown the baton or the opportunity to share the good news. So the good news, I'll stand up so that I'm not behind everyone. So the good news is, we've been in discussions with our auditors, and we reached a deal to extend the contract for them to do the audit for another year. Folks might remember this predates probably almost all of you and me also, but prior to the last 3 years, the district didn't have its own independent audit. So ultimately, we went through an RFP process. We selected a vendor to do the audit. They've done the audit for the last 3 years. So we, in working with them, were able to get an extension on that at no additional cost to us. So they're keeping the price level, which I think is a steal for us, given the amount of work we've made them do for the last 3 years. So we wanted folks to just know and be aware of that, so that going forward, we will be able to do it. And we're going to be working with them, in fact, in just a few weeks, in June, where they come and kind of do some pre-audit work to kind of get the ball rolling on the work that they'll then dig into in earnest when they come back after the close of our fiscal year. So it's a good opportunity. Also, having the continuity is a real strength for us at this point, because to some degree, they are always learning about the district, and they're able to dig deeper the longer they've been here. At a certain point, years down the road, it becomes useful to consider having a new partnership, so you get fresh eyes on what you're doing and that sort of thing. But we're nowhere near the kind of length of a relationship where we would need to or necessarily want to go out and get a new firm. So I'm pretty just excited about that, because it's one less thing that we need to think about, particularly with respect to being able to stay within our budgeted funds for that work. That's the good news.
Thank you.
You'll sit now?
I'm set now, thanks.
Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yes. Yes.
Commissioner Judson, seconded by Commissioner Curry. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those against? Motion passes unanimously.
Well, one sec, we don't do any discussion on this?
We don't. You have to pull something from the agenda, of which it gets separated and we get voted on another time.
And how do we do that? I mean, how do we even discuss, because there's some important stuff in here.
stuff to be taken off the agenda.
At what point in the meeting?
When I just said, yeah, so you'd
We
have to,
made the
you'd have to
motion.
say, I need something taken, stricken from the agenda. So it would actually get taken off the agenda, I'm sorry, would get taken off the consent agenda, would be voted on separately from the agenda, the consent agenda. But the best thing you can do on the consent agenda is review it early and ask questions early.
So I've reviewed it early,
Okay, did you send questions?
but I thought we could have a discussion
Yeah,
about
not
some
on the
questions
consent
we
agenda.
had.
Yeah, not on consent agenda, we can't.
All right, well, this seems like a pretty important consent agenda with some need for some context.
Can I just speak to that for a minute?
Ms. Curry?
So, and this, Kathy brought this up earlier, so, it's important to realize that the purpose of these recommendations is for the superintendent to show us that he's doing his job by filling positions. The actual people on the consent agenda are kind of irrelevant. It could just say John and Jane Smith for the whole thing.
I agree.
It's just that he's showing us he's filling those, he's doing his job, not for us to actually get involved in who they are, why they're there, what the staffing needs are of the school. That's his job. So
I get
it's just
that.
important to
I'm-
separate out kind of getting attached to the content of the consent agenda versus the what it represents to us.
You're not understanding what I'm saying.
Okay, I'll just
I don't
ask if
care
the
who
chair.
was
So
on it.
the
I'll
only,
just ask if the chair.
so we
will
can't
have
discuss this
discussion.
unless somebody makes a motion to pull something from the agenda, of which it be voted on separately from the consent agenda. Do I have somebody that must make a motion specifically to pull something that actually takes a vote to approve this?
Didn't
Okay.
we vote, wasn't there a vote on the consent agenda? Yes.
So why don't we put this on as a discussion item
Yeah,
for
that's right, there
next
was.
time?
Oh, please, just one
Sorry.
Just 1 second, everybody. Everybody's talking, I don't know who's talking, all right? So, there was a vote to approve the agenda, so the consent agenda was approved as is. But Jeff, I understand your concern, so let's figure out a time when we can, like this week, Then
maybe
we can
we
sit
could,
down with whoever you want to, and we can discuss.
could we put it up, because I like what Liz said, and I agree, I'm not gonna create any issues tonight, but in general, I think maybe in a future meeting, we could have a discussion as to what, the what and the why of what ought to go in a consent agenda.
Then we'd have to not have it on the consent agenda in the first place. So there's very strict rules as to what can go on the consent agenda.
Okay, so
Right?
I will admit
Yeah.
ignorance here. When you
That's
say there are
okay.
very strict rules as to what goes on the consent agenda, where are those rules?
So,
I'll read them.
again, let's not do it right now.
Yeah,
Okay? So let's go through on how these things are formulated, and we can go from there, okay? But let's get together this week, and we can maybe sit down with the superintendent and decide how we want to do these things.
yeah, that's fine. Just philosophically, it strikes me, some things on the consent agenda,
Well, he can explain that
I can, so
Okay.
we'll talk to you later.
fair enough.
Okay, so consent agenda passes as is. Next up is the executive session. I have a motion to consider executive session to discuss contract negotiations where premature disclosure to the public could put the district at a disadvantage, and also to consider pending or probable civil litigation. Can I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Seguino, all those in favor of entering executive session, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against?
Aye.
Thank you, Ryan. All those against? Seeing none. Motion passes unanimously. We'll now move into executive session.
And also, congratulations.